It's time for another Out of Bounds Rewind with Bo Bounds on ESPN 105.9 The Zone.
You and I talk about talent and recruiting all the time throughout the year, whatever sport. And we always talk about upgrading on this, whatever you're doing, starting pitching in baseball, the three-hitter in baseball, the point guard. If Chris Jans had a shooter this year, he'd probably be going to the NCAA tournament. So he needs, I think you and I can safely say, he needs to even though he's doing a hell of a job, he needs to upgrade on perimeter shooting. So the listeners, these MSU listeners asked, you always talk about upgrading wide receivers, offensive line, edge rushers, so on. Why can't you even broach the topic of upgrading at the quarterback position? Why is that such a volatile or whatever topic in your opinion, Steve?
Well, I don't necessarily know that it is. I mean, this is the first year they didn't bring in a transfer quarterback since Will Rogers has been there. Of course, KJ came in with Will, hoping to be the stopgap guy while Will's developed. And then last year you bring in Jack Abraham, and then unfortunately he has an injury that prevents him from playing. And so they've brought in competition every year, with the exception of this year. And so. Is there a possibility of a transfer quarterback? Well, sure. But a lot of those guys are going to transfer and, walk on like Adam Gordon did, And so those are the things you have to think about is, you look at it right now and you think, hey, we got to do this. Well, they've attempted to do that. It just hadn't worked out real well for them because KJ couldn't read defenses and Jack Abraham couldn't stay healthy, and that's not a shot at Jack. That's just kind of the reality of the situation.
All right. So the Chris Parson thing is way down the road. And if this staff loses a third golden egg, and they'll be underdogs, and they should be, can you roll out this same deal next year? The same offense that they're running with Leach doing the same thing with Will Rogers in 2023 without an all-out mutiny?
Well, I think you got to make some tweaks, and I think we've seen some of that this year, but probably not enough of them. It's like you see him running the football a little bit more in some games, and then Dylan Johnson gets hurt, and next thing you know, you're not running the football much at all when he and Winston Sharp go out. And granted, you played Alabama and Georgia, but I think these next couple ball games you're going to see him run the football a little bit more. But Will has a ceiling. Every quarterback does, and he's not a guy that is going to go tuck it and run and really be a plus runner, But he does a lot of other things really well. But he's not a complete quarterback, and I think, is Parson a complete quarterback? We don't know. I don't know what his accuracy looks like and things of that nature, but, the reality of it is that everybody's got to play a little bit better, not just Will Rogers, but everybody around him.
Do you think Leach has it in him at 61 years old to modify the offense like Lane, Browse, Kyle Shanahan, and all these guys that are running the air raid, Steve, Aranda, but they're just running a modified version of the air raid?
Yeah, I think he has to, in some respects, because, the game has changed. And if you look at what some people are doing, with the running game kind of complementing the air raid concept in and of itself, they're having some success, And so, yeah, I think he has to. I think that's one of the things that probably this offseason you've got to really address is putting in some new wrinkles and maybe making more of a commitment to run the football a little bit more. But, some of that too is, offensive line play has been good at times with pass pro, and I thought they were good this past weekend for the most part. They only give up the one sack, but there were still a handful of hurries and some passes that Will got flushed out of the pocket and had to just throw out of bounds. But, you've got to keep defenses a little more honest. You've got to put them in a situation where they can't just pin their ears back and say, okay, they're throwing. You got to at least plant a little half second of indecision in their minds. And, sometimes that's the difference between a big play and an incompletion.
Steve Robertson, Gene's Page, 247 Sports on the Out of Bounds Show.
Don't miss one moment of the Out of Bounds Show with Bo Bounds. Weekdays, 7 a.m. till 10 a.m. on ESPN 105.9 The Zone.